Well, a school board in Montgomery County is set to vote on whether to mandate that students must use the bathroom that corresponds with their gender at birth. The vote would effectively ban transgender students from using a bathroom of the gender with which they identify. Action News race and culture reporter Taronda Thomas has the details tonight from Collegeville.
2 weeks into the new school year, and a major issue is already brewing in Perkiomen Valley School District.
We do have a difficult conversation that the board needs to, in my opinion, that we need to address.
The board is set to vote on Policy 720, which would require students to use bathrooms that align with their biological sex, meaning transgender students would not be allowed to use the restrooms that correlate with their gender identities. The proposal sparked with a social media post by a dad who says his daughter encountered someone she thought may have been a boy in the bathroom.
My daughter will go to school and not use the restroom here now. She's too upset.
There was no factual evidence saying that the other person in the restroom was trans or a man in any way.
The Perkiomen Valley School Board president supports the policy, which states that multi-use restrooms and locker rooms designated for one sex will be used only by that sex. Other students will be offered single-use restrooms.
Students should have access to any bathroom they want, depending on how they identify. Do we think that's appropriate? It's my personal opinion. I don't.
But the superintendent thinks a new bathroom policy is not necessary.
We have Policy 103, which is non-discrimination in Title IX. It calls out gender identification as a protected class.
With a vote set for tonight, former students like Taryn McDonald will speak to the board, recalling her own experience being bullied as a transgender student at Perkiomen Valley High School.
I understand that change can be tough, but it's really, I think we're moving forward. And I think that's, I think people just need to get more used to it.
Yeah, if you're not careful, you may not understand what the ABC report is clearly outlining. What are they saying clearly? And we'll bring context very short time, so don't worry. But we see a bunch of old folk, a bunch of so-called educational leaders having a conversation on this policy 103, which she is holding up, the superintendent, which he's holding up like it's the Bible, like it's holy law. And this has only been signed into law through executive order at the inauguration, or at just a few days after the inauguration of Biden becoming the president. So much of this is still new as to how this is going to affect everyday life in these schools. So you have transgender people, biological boys, biological women, who now identify as the opposite sex. And they're asking or requiring that they have access to the bathroom in which they now identify as. So I'm a biological male. I now identify as a transgender woman. I want access to the women's bathrooms, the women's showers, the women's restrooms. Or that's how it goes. And that's what's going on. And it's freaking out a lot of young girls. We did one video a few weeks back or a few months back on the University of Pennsylvania situation, how they upheld, posterized the transgender swimmer, but it was at the expense of many of the other natural female biological swimmers. And their voices were suppressed for quite some time. But here we see right here in real time the dilly-dallying and the delaying and the irresponsible, timely reply of these educational leaders here in this Valley School District. But as we said before, no worries at all, family. You ain't got to worry about none of that. Because where there's one course of action, there will be an equal and opposite force. Where those fools act like they don't know what a woman is, where they want to pretend. I'm not calling them fools in that respect, like they're fools, but I'm just saying, any human being who wants to pretend as if they don't know what a biological woman is, then you're foolish. Any person that wants to pretend they don't know what a biological man is, then you're foolish. Biology is not below identification, or personal identification does not trump or go before biology. And anyone who wants to conflate or confuse this two, then you must obviously be a slave to liberal policy or liberal company and corporate policy. But I will show you in real time Who is not a slave? Not as of yet, anyway. Not yet, anyway. And that's why I'm very thankful for the children of America. I'm thankful for the youth of America. I tell them to continue to hold your ground, to fight for your rights, fight for your future. Because unlike many of your parents, unfortunately, they have grown old, obese, weak, scared, and timid. And they will not stand up for truth if someone put a gun to their head, sad to say. That's how many Americans are walking around to this very day. That's why I like to spend my time and talk to the youth. You look at what's going on over in Africa with the simultaneous coup d'etats. What's going on over in Africa, the same thing going over here, right here in America. It is the young folk, not the old folk. And old is relative, but I'm saying old as in like 50 and above or 40 and above. It is not the old folk who are revolting. It is not the old folk who are keeping these so-called leaders, making them responsible for their decisions and for their policy implementations. And it's not the old folk. It is the young folk. It's the young folk in Africa. It's the young folk in America. Now look at these people right here. Now look at this right here. Look at the line. Look at the line of students walking out of the school protesting what they're protesting. And let's be very clear before we play this video as to what they are protesting. I don't want anything choppy or anything being unclear here. But here we have hundreds of high school students organized a walkout to protest trans bathroom rules are right now are compromised. The students, not the parents, the students, not the adults, they are protesting that their rights are being compromised. Hundreds of students from Pennsylvania Perkiomen Valley School District walked out of class Friday after the local school board failed to enact a policy requiring transgender students to use the restroom corresponding with their biological sex. We already went over that. As wordy as that may sound, all we're saying is the biological boys who were born boys, some of them termed trans, they want access to female bathrooms, showers, and restrooms. And this has caused a great deal of conflict from the so-called board members, but also within the students. But the students are collectively moving. They are more unified, they are more ordered, they are more in direction than the adults. And I'm sure that the protest which took place on that Friday, the walkout, I'm sure some adults were indirectly and directly involved, possibly some teachers and some parents. I get all that. But all in all, or overall, it was a consensus of the studentship, of the students, the younger folk. They understand their rights are being compromised. They realize that the young girls are being terrorized. They realize that the young boys are being effeminized. And it's sad to say it's the adults who want to act and pretend as if these things are not happening in real time, in reality. So while they were playing around in the board meeting, coming to no conclusion, coming to no decision at all, I'll tell you what the students said. I'll tell you what the students did. I'll show you what they said and what they did. They clearly said, have a good day. You will not have a school or a classroom without students. The school is not the brick, mortar, and stone in which the grounds reside. The school is actually the student body. The school is actually represented by the students, the human resources. So the students, the people are standing up and they're saying, you will not compromise my rights. And our collective voice will be heard, we will take a stand. See, I used to be in the classrooms. I used to be in the colleges. I used to be in the universities. I used to be in the public high schools. And if any of my students came up to me and say, Mr. Barr, you see what's going on over here, don't you? You see what's going on? Should we go back in class, or should we hold our ground, or should we push forward? I say, children, not. I would tell my students very clearly, and they all know me. I would tell them very clearly, and I love all my students. I love them all. I truly love all the players I've coached and all my students. I truly love them all. I would never lie to them. And I would never tell someone to do something that I would not do myself, or I'm not prepared to do myself. I would tell each and every student that made a protest for this, I would tell them very simply, continue on. Continue on. Not every lesson that you're going to learn is going to be in a classroom. Some of the greatest lessons that you will ever learn are going to be outside of the classroom in your pursuit of your happiness and protection of your rights. I would tell them to stand their ground, to not be aggressive, but to let your voice be heard and let your ground be stood. It's just that simple, family. Anytime someone's trying to make a situation out of nothing, to make an issue out of biology so complicated, there is clearly a socio-political agenda attached. But the children are more pure. The children are the future, and they are more pure. They can see through the nonsense. They can see directly to the core root of the problem. And they don't like it. They said our rights are being compromised. I need the adults of America to begin to take the lead of the children. Believe it or not, it should be the other way around. The children should be led by the adults. But now in these days and these times, it seems as if the children will have to lead us. Now I would tell the children to lead on, to march and lead the way. I'm right there with you.
School district's new bathroom policy passed in a heated meeting Monday night. Now activists and organizations are reacting to the policy, which they say discriminates against transgender students. Action News race and culture reporter Taronda Thomas here in studio with us. And Taronda, this isn't the first time that the board has voted on a similar policy.
No, it's not, Shari. The Perkiomen Valley School Board actually rejected the bathroom policy when they voted on it last month. This week, the policy vote came up again, and this time it passed.
This is a very hot button issue.
One that has caused heated debates across Perkiomen Valley School District.
Mr. Saylor, you need to remove that person.
Monday night, it came to a head as the school board voted to pass Policy 720. It requires students to use bathrooms that align with their sex assigned at birth, meaning transgender students would not be allowed to use the restrooms or locker rooms that correlate with their gender identities.
I thought that bathroom policy was the best thing to do. I work in healthcare. I cover hospitals from Philadelphia to Maine. They all are dealing with the bathroom issue.
This does not consider Title IX. It does not bring into the fact that we're going to be in lawsuits.
The ACLU echoing that sentiment, saying in a statement to Action News, quote, the policy not only harms transgender young people, but could subject the school district to costly litigation. Policy 720 received support in the meeting from some residents and school board members who pushed the policy. It makes single-use restrooms available to transgender students.
Some students in this school district that are uncomfortable that someone from the opposite sex would enter a locker room or a bathroom.
The vote in Perkiomen Valley complete, but the debate far from over.
So let's be clear as to what happened. The Perkiomen Valley School, they voted on the 720 bill and it passed. The 720 bill simply stated that the children who are biologically by birth boys, they will strictly be in boys' bathrooms. Girls who are biologically birthed girls will strictly be in girls' bathrooms. The transgenders will have their own distinct bathroom. Now, this was voted. Now, let's be clear. Let's be very clear as to what happened. It's not as if the vote just transpired in the favor of the students. No, it did not. That's why I showed you the video and gave you the commentary prior to. This was going on over the last 3 or 4 months. This last clip right here was the temporary conclusion. I'm not going to say the conclusion because the debate and this gender war will continue to go forward. But what has happened was you saw the activity of the children via the protests, and then from there you begin to see the educational leaders although they are not in favor of this bill being passed, they had no choice but to comply. You saw one of the doctors there, and educational leaders, and also along with the ACLU, how they were saying that this may possibly affect the transgender youth. One thing this video clip does not make mention of, that the transgender youth of America represents about 0.6%. So they're having this long controversy, this heated debate over 0.6% of the American population, while the other 99.4% suffer. Now make that make sense. And that's why the diligence of the students are needful. Let's be clear. The vote did not just happen to go through. It was the political activism of the students that made the vote be pushed through. And that's the juice.
The school board members who opposed Policy 720 tried introducing their own policy at the meeting, which they said was a compromise. It would have specified that students have to use the bathroom that aligns with their consistent gender identity. The board, though, rejected that policy. Rick?